How many people do we have now?
We currently have 5.
Okay.
Judith, if it's okay with you, we'll give it to 6:35 and see if that gets us there. All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said we'll give it until about 6:35 and see if that gets us to where we need to be. Sound okay?
Oh, that's fine with me. But Carly, and is Jose on the line?
So Jose is. I'm going to be chairing the meeting tonight. I'll mention that when we all get started.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I sent an email. Diane's going to be late on the call. She has a Zoom call that she's on now.
Great. Thanks, Judith.
Okay.
Okay, we have quorum.
Let's just give Marissa a minute to get settled, if that's all right. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Hello. My name is Jessica Morris. I am the Vice Chair of Public Safety and Transportation for Manhattan Community Board 11. I'm going to be chairing the meeting tonight. Jose Altamirano, our committee chair, is not able to be with us tonight. Jose is, he's given the go-ahead to let you all know that he is day by day recovering from a bout with COVID-19 and looks forward to getting back with us after the holidays in January. So send Jose your well wishes. Carly, if I can call the meeting to order here at 6:36. And if you would read for us how we're supposed to conduct our business here in COVID times.
Of course. Thank you so much, Jessica. Until further notice, all meetings of Manhattan Community Board 11 will be conducted by video conference. Links to register to attend video conferences for each of our committee meetings will be published on our meeting calendar on our website. To avoid crosstalk and help the meeting run effectively, panelists and attendees are asked to keep their microphones on mute when they are not speaking. It's also helpful to utilize headphones. Those participating by phone can dial *6 to unmute. If you wish to share a question or a comment, you may do so by utilizing the raise hands function. I will be monitoring to ensure that your hands are recognized. Those participating by phone can dial *9 to raise your hand. Committee will be called on first and then attendees. Please keep your questions or comments brief. Jessica already called the meeting to order and I can do a roll call attendance now. So I'll get started. Jose Altamirano, he's excused. Brown.
Present.
Collier. I know she's arriving late. Diaz. Cabrero.
Present.
Garcia.
Present.
Mack. I'm gonna,
All right, yeah.
okay. Morris.
Here.
Sanders. And Wiltshire Clement.
Present.
Okay, we have quorum.
Wonderful. Can I open up the floor for a motion to adopt our agenda?
Motion to adopt.
Seconded by Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay. So with that, I think we're going to move ahead to some informational updates. I see Officer Gibbons here. I don't see anyone from the 25th precinct. I know past couple of meetings we have done a 1-2 punch, heard from each of you, and then entertained questions from the board and the public all together. And I see Kyoka just joined us, which would line up another informational interview. So welcome. So I'm not sure, Officer Gibbons, if you want to get started, and then if we have another voice from the 25th that joins us, we can hear from them as well. But please go ahead.
Thank you, Jessica. I appreciate it. My well wishes to you all. I hope you and yours are safe. I'm Officer Gibbons from the 23rd Precinct, and I will take you through the crime report since the last time we spoke, which is probably roughly equivalent to the 28-day period with which we keep the statistics. So I'll take you through the last 28-day period. We are up 2.6% in major crime in the last 28-day period. That is 80 crimes this year versus 78 last year. So while we still remain stubbornly high in terms of major crime year to date, 15.9% increase over last year. The last month has been a little kinder to us. We are up 2.6%, as I noted. I'll take you through the categories and talk about the various crimes that are occurring. Murders, thankfully, we've had none in the 28-day period. We also had none last year. Rapes, we had one in the 28-day period. We also had one in 2019. The rape that occurred, tragically, is a step-grandfather who assaulted a minor family member. Robbery, we've had 13 this year in the 28-day period versus 21 last year, for a decrease of 38%. Notably, despite the decrease, notably among the robberies, we had bank robberies, multiple, which is extremely rare for our precinct, since our banks are located in a busy commercial corridor, 106 and 3rd, 106 and 2nd, and they're not immediately adjacent to public transportation. So we're very thankful for that. Well, bus routes, yes, but not trains, which is the preferred mode of escape for a lot of bank robbers. But on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, both our banks, Ponce de Leon and Chase at 106 and 3rd, were robbed by the same dude. He pulled a hypodermic needle on employees at the banks and demanded money. In one case, he received $1,000 and he took off. But not to mention my own name in these reports, I caught him, which is kind of cool because a lot of times these guys do slip away and they're caught in later incidences through video review. But I caught the guy in the act. I caught him coming out of the building. It was pretty awesome. He'd actually also robbed or attempted to rob a bank in the 25th precinct about an hour and a half earlier that day. So 3 bank robberies in one day for this busy character. But he's behind bars now. Felony assaults, next category, felony assaults, 21 during this 28-day period, Also 21 last year. So we're even in felony assaults. As I noted last time we spoke, a lot of our felony assaults are related to people who are just carrying weapons these days. You know, we've talked about gun violence, and I'll get into it a little bit later. But also just people carrying knives, carrying hammers. We had our officers ran into an attempted hammer attack on the 1st of this month, 1st of December. Our sergeant and his officer who was driving him saw apparently someone suffering from mental illness at 116th and Lexington Avenue waving a hammer around, clearly intending to try to hit people because they were scurrying from him, and they arrested him for it before he actually made contact with anyone. I noted also, I think in our last meeting that we had a meeting the day after there was a horrible knife attack during a failed robbery on 2nd Avenue, where the older victim was stabbed multiple times, and we caught the individual right away. He led a blood trail up to his home. He had an apartment on 116th Street. So a lot of these incidences and street disputes and issues that have occurred on our streets are now ending with, unfortunately, bloodshed and a felony assault complaint because of people carrying weapons more often. Next category, burglary. We have 7 burglaries during this 28-day period versus 3 last year, for an increase of 133%, which sounds like a lot. It is. That's a small sample size, but over the course of a year, we are up 100% in burglaries. Just so folks get an idea of what I'm talking about, I'm going to break down the burglaries that occurred during this 28-day period real quick. 2 were outdoor maintenance or storage facilities. 3 were restaurants, and I know Judith likes to know which restaurants because she's on that permits committee and likes to see if it's any of hers. Mali, a Thai restaurant on 2nd Avenue, Las Panteras Negras on 2nd Avenue, approximately around 109th Street, and the Guthrie Inn at 97th Street and Park Avenue. We had 1 burglary of a laundromat and only 1 burglary of a residential building. The person never entered any apartments. Suspect took items from outside apartments, shoes, actually, sneakers, expensive sneakers in some cases. Grand larceny, next topic, 33 this 28-day period versus 31 in 2019, for a slight increase, 6.5%. Grand larcenies take the form primarily of thefts of e-bikes and city bikes. Huge issue, almost every day in our precinct. I mention it everywhere, every time we gather, just a huge issue. Also, again, rearing its ugly head. It's been sort of a consistent crime, but we've seen a number of them in the last couple of weeks. Scams that take all sorts of forms, but have a very common denominator: somebody calling over the phone, asking, demanding, or convincing the person on the other end to send money. That person is unable to confirm the identity, or doesn't, or is intimidated into sending money before they confirm the identity of the caller, or is fooled and they send money. In some cases, lots of money. Social Security Administration, there's the DWI, we're calling, I'm a lawyer, your son or sister-in-law has been involved in a DWI arrest, I need money for bail. Catfishing, people who get involved in social media with a picture that they are attracted to online, and then the person on the other end who isn't the picture threatens to post compromising information that they may or may not have. It doesn't matter. People send money, they panic and send money. So scams, phone scams for years and years and years, but we've just seen in the last 3 weeks to a month, we've just seen more of these than ever. Not more than ever, more than we have in recent days. So those are our grand larcenies. And lastly, grand larcenies of vehicles. In the 28-day period, we've had 5 versus only 1 in 2019. And that's been a common theme. For the year, we've had 62 and only 19 in 2019. So we are up in grand larcenies of vehicles. More and more cars are being taken. I talk a lot about cars being taken with the keys in the ignition and the car running. That's not what we saw in the last 28-day period. We saw vehicles being actually taken from parked spots overnight. So GLAs or grand larcenies of autos are back in style in a big way. Major issue citywide, 67% increase in GLAs or grand larcenies of autos. So please pay attention to that and help us spread the word. Shootings, lastly, shootings have stabilized in the last 3 months. I won't go too far back and get that much in depth because I'm already probably over my time, but June and July were especially brutal. We remember that. August, things started to subside. 3 people shot in August. September, 2 people shot. October, 2 people shot. November, 3 people shot. And so far in December, we have 1 person shot under very sketchy circumstances. We're not really sure that it occurred here in the precinct, but the numbers have stabilized. Obviously, we're not satisfied with those numbers. It's still too many, but it beats the 21 people who were shot in June and July. Just recent shootings. And the other thing to note, since August 1st, really none of our shootings are youth crew or gang related. Some people involved in the shooting, suspects and those that we've arrested or victims, may be involved in a crew or an affiliate of a crew, but we don't think the motivation behind these shootings have been youth crew or gang related, which is different than the summer. What we're seeing is internal disputes resulting in shootings. Internal disputes in East River and Wilson between members of the same, the same geographical area, families that have grown up proximate to one another, but members of these developments have gone back and forth of late, and also in Metro North houses. Appears to be narcotics related, perhaps turf dispute over people selling on 101st Street and 102nd Street in the Metro North houses between 2nd and 3rd Avenues. Excuse me, between 1st and 2nd Avenues. So
Coming up on 10 minutes, just so you know.
Okay, thank you.
You're there.
That's, why have things stabilized? Again, for whatever reason, the gangs in our area have not participated in recent violence against one another. We've made some very significant arrests. Our detective squad has arrested 4 shooters responsible for shooting since October 1st. Our public safety team has taken 5 guns off of our streets since October 1st. So that is perhaps one of the reasons that the shootings have subsided on the gang front. That is my crime report from the 23rd precinct. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Officer Gibbons, and commendations to you on your apprehension of our bank robber.
Oh, thank you.
Any questions from the committee? I see Michelle, you have your hand raised?
Yes,
Right.
I do.
Sure.
Thank you, Officer Gibbons, for your report. And also thank you for apprehending that bank robber that was on a spree.
Yes.
I was curious to find out the person that had attacked with a hammer. He was mentally ill, you said, and that he was apprehended. Was he placed in custody as in jail, or was he placed in another type of facility, since you mentioned that he was mentally ill?
Right. So that's up to, well, that's just an empirical observation based on the fact that he didn't appear to be involved in any kind of altercation. He was merely targeting passersby randomly. And then, of course, subsequent to arrest, he appeared unstable. That is up to the judge, obviously. He was given a future court date, and they'll determine what the penalty will be, whether whether his legal counsel will prove his mental instability, and therefore he won't be, locked up by corrections. He will be evaluated for a different kind of detention. But as far as the police are concerned, when we have a crime in progress like that we observe, we have a weapon, we have attempted assault, attempted felony assault, we take that person into our custody and then bring him to the courts.
Thank you, Michelle. A follow-up question, or does that suffice? I do have a follow-up that's related, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I think I do have a follow-up question,
Go ahead.
as in, I thought that procedures were going to be put into place for individuals that seemed that they were mentally unstable, so that they weren't furloughed into the system where they were not able to grant any of the necessary provisions that they need, especially with what is happening. And if he just gets furloughed into that system, he could just come out and do the same thing again. That is my understanding, that there was a large body of evidence that was put into place that we were going to put into the police department, into some sort of actually, I can't even think of the words. I'm a little upset.
So, Michelle, maybe I can offer some assistance to try to get to the point. I think from the perspective of Officer Gibbons and public safety, I think a sort of a violent act that puts public safety at risk is something that needs to be handled and de-escalated. Once the person,
no, that I completely understand.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think what you're getting at is the relationship between those who may have a mental illness and the criminal justice system. And I think that you're absolutely right that process and series of interactions is something that from an enforcement and a public safety perspective, we it will come up again. I think later in our meeting, we'll have a bit of a series of comments and announcements from the Human Services Committee. But I guess my question that relates to your point, Michelle, directed towards Officer Gibbons is, do you work with the heat unit in our district?
The heat unit?
Yeah.
No.
No. Okay. I have more research to do on that, but was told that there are, Michelle, to your point, certain units that respond more directly to calls and complaints about individuals exhibiting, public safety issues that fall into the category of a sort of a mental illness, an episode or something like that, as opposed to, in this case, a potentially violent and horrific sort of public safety hazard. So
is the heat unit part of is the heat unit part of the NYPD?
No, it's not. But in some districts, they're in some precincts, they're working closely together. I'll find out more and also inquire a bit more with what that potential integration is and where it's happening, if that's helpful for you to know about, and if it's potentially something that our district could benefit from.
Yeah, sure, but we did the same thing with what we call our co-response unit, which was officers assigned throughout the city, and then working in partnership with trained medical and psychological professionals who would respond to chronically dangerous issues involving people who are mentally in distress. But with a case like this is something that happens spontaneously on the street with or without a 911 call. So the reference is made after the fact. So the arrest must be made for public safety reasons, and for culpability reasons. But then if we determine, or we think we don't determine, we're not in the business of doing that. But if we suspect someone would benefit from a trip to the hospital, or if they request that, then we're going to take them there. But that doesn't mean that we release them. That means that we, prior to being arraigned, we'll get them treatment that they need. And then we bring them down to the court, and then the judge determines the rest. Just
Yeah,
in case I was confusing people, I don't know.
no, I think it's helpful, and it is a characterization. I'm not sure how you phrased it, but I think handling of mental illness in the criminal justice system is it is a deep systemic challenge to better understand, and Michelle, to your point, understand how we may be able to do better in that respect, as opposed to and in tandem with making sure that that response on the street is appropriate to the action being intervened with, to support public safety and to support our vulnerable community members who may be having a certain moment there in public. So are there, I have one a question and a comment. The question relates to who reports the city bike thefts?
The user of the bike. Usually what they do is they'll call City Bike after their bike has either been stolen, or City Bike will contact them saying your bike was never docked and you owe us $2,000. So then it behooves the user, if they want to pay $2,000, they have to report it to the NYPD.
Okay, so it's during a ride, the bike gets stolen and doesn't get returned. So that process is happens through City Bike and is recommended to make a report if the bike is stolen.
Right, otherwise they're on the hook for $2,000. It's kind of 50-50 between people that have their City Bike stolen while they're on a legitimate ride, like they pull over and they jump out to grab a bottle of water, or people who dock the bike, don't dock it properly. They think they've jammed it in all the way, but it hasn't. And then somebody who just checking bikes to see which ones they can jimmy loose takes it out. So
and then thank you for that clarification. And then it's great to hear about the shootings cooling off. I think that has to do with the season, no doubt, but also want to be proactive in recognizing that we understand the rise in gun violence rises with the heat, that summertime and when activities are not adequately provided for young folks, that that type of activity typically increases. So I think everything being amplified this year by the sort of social justice movement in the spring, along with our lockdown pandemic condition, has shown us exactly what happens when we don't provide the types of things that we should be providing to minimize those types of activities. So continuing to hear those numbers and get ahead of them as we hibernate for the winter, but set up for what will be another warm season come June, July, and August. I think we can't hear enough how that ebbs and flows. So thank you for bringing that up and giving context to it. So if it's okay with you, maybe we'll move on to, do we have any representative from PSA 5? I see we have our community council, Kyoka. Did you want to give a report back next? I think it would be great to hear from you. We can't hear you yet for some reason. There we go. Still can't hear you.
I don't know what to do.
There we go. We got you now.
Okay, I'm going to try this really quickly. I'm in the precinct, and it was great to see our vice chair today. One of the things I just want to point out is that the pilot program is off and running. We have our greet. I'm actually a greeter, which is why I'm here at the precinct on Tuesday nights. But we also have a 11 to 7 individual who greets individuals that come into the precinct. And we just got installed the kiosk, which people can come in. They don't have to talk to anybody. They can press in the information that they need, so they can get their car accident report or things like that. I'm not next to it right this second because it's loud out there, but it's rolling out. We actually had a brief conversation about it today, and that's what's happening here. I also wanted to say two quick things. One, I say this every year, hoping that it's understood that we have the precinct council meetings in which the commanding officer and NCOs and everyone else is in attendance, where we ask people from Community Board 11 to please attend. I know Judith attends, and thank you, Judith. I see Judith's name on here, but maybe others can attend, so all of the information that we're having here can be shared back, especially when someone's not in representation of the 2-5 or PSA 5 and things of that nature, because you get all the information there. You get the comp stat and things of that nature, but you also get to hear the community concern outside of you guys, but the community who kind of represent a larger portion of our community, and it's great to be at that meeting for that purpose. The other thing is I work closely, have been working closely with Commissioner Parker to work with the young people in the community. He's doing a whole lot of community conversations with the youth in the community just to hear their voices, to get a sense of, you know, what they're feeling, how questions can be answered. So part of my role is to, you know, gather some of those young people, attend other meetings and invite them to those meetings, but also to try to help educate the young people. So I'll be calling together a meeting with young people within our community soon. I've been waiting because they've been doing meetings other places, but for two purposes, because there's a whole education piece that a lot of the young people in our community don't have. And so a lot of, and this is no pro NYPD anything, but just a lot of times when people ask questions and they have like a concern, it's because they're not educated on processes. And I think that, you know, it is, you know, it's very imperative for us to educate the young people and adults as well about processes and procedures and things that are actually happening within the NYPD that's going on, because some of the questions are things are happening and then they just don't know. So educating them, and so that's part of my role working with Commissioner Parker. That's it for me. Oh, and we will not be having our annual toy giveaway this year, but we will be doing a smaller event. You know, our toy giveaway, we do 500 to 700 kids every single year, but because of the pandemic, we will not be doing that this year. But a smaller event will be happening, so it's no secret. We had to choose young people, and what we did was choose young people that was either affected directly by COVID. So if their family members, you know, were positive, and they, you know, whatever the situation was, they had to, whatever the situation was, like TV, anything like that, that, you know, they had a tragic accident in their family within a year. Those are the children we chose this year. So no big 500 people, but about 40 kids will be receiving gifts from our officers.
Thank you, Tioka, for all of your work and for the incredible progress through such really difficult times to shift gears and figure out how to keep doing what you do in a different landscape here. So thank you. And I will do my best to show up, because that's what you're asking us to do, is show up with open ears and hear what's going on. So I'll tap into Judith or you to make sure I know when that's going on and see if I can get there. And I see Jeremy's wants to give us an update next. He's on board with what you're saying, and I think I don't know if we have any questions from board members or the public, but I just want to put a bug in your ear. We've been talking about a Know Your Rights forum and how we might do that, you know, to have the most impact for people in Harlem. And I think one of the things that came up, and we'll rehash it later in the meeting, is that the youth voice is an important part of that. And so if I can we can tap into some of the work that you're already doing and make sure we're connecting the dots and representing constituents of all ages, that's really important to do in order to make sure that the message and the messages get out there. So we'll follow up. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? No. Okay, with that, Jerry, would you like to give us your report? Thanks so much, Kyoko. Jeremy Lockett from the.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me all right? Because you were coming a little staticky, and I was worried that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. I heard the same thing, but yeah, you're clear.
All right, thank you. Because I was thinking myself, like, is it my laptop? And I got whatever. But all right, so good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone. Thank you, Kyoka. Thank you, Jessica. Jeremy Lockett from the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. I'm with the Community Partnership Unit with the 2325. Couple quick updates on my end. Definitely want to acknowledge a couple of things that were said, and maybe it's a question mark as well as the know your rights. I'm wondering if we could take part in that in any way. I think in the last conversation you were sort of directing that maybe towards the NYPD and maybe a process of whether it's like arrest to sentence or arraignment, or I think that we could be involved in that fairly easily, whether it's our education unit or our reentry team. And it'd be great to just be a part of that. And that's just something that I think just across the board, we've been having meetings recently about how, like, how open is our office, and a couple things. I do not have an update for the 2.5, but something that definitely has been hitting recently, and I'm glad you acknowledged it, was, if we've been stabilizing in shootings or youth violence, it doesn't mean that it's gone away. And it's something that we need to talk about at these meetings. And it's not like we're going to get bored in these conversations. So I appreciate you bringing it up. Our unit, particularly WASU right now, is working hard. Our Witness Aid Service unit, they exist right now in our Harlem office as well as our downtown office. But last week, thanks to some community members that are not on this call, but I see them in some of our other conversations, from Wagner, we were able to support a family that definitely has been going through something pretty recently through a shooting that occurred last week at Wagner. And I think we just need to just stay focused on this. So our team is definitely working with the 2.5 and the 2.3. I know it's our crime strategy unit, but we're continuing to focusing on the younger population, which jumping off to me is that's 12 and 13-year-olds, and it's upwards from there. We are having meetings with groups that will be able to work with this population right now. And I know Officer Gibbons works with these groups. I know that other groups from the 2.5 do, and we'll continue to do this and do the work. And but that's something I just wanted to mention. So some holiday updates. We are doing a small toy drive at the office, but I do want to mention, holidays are a big thing, but essential items during these times are especially important. It's cold. Young people that are homeless, young people that are aging out of foster care, those that don't have something to fall back on. I know that in East Harlem, the door right now is accepting maybe not toys, but they're accepting essential items. So that is, underwear, that is sweatpants, sweatshirts, toothpaste, items that are, I think, easier to get sometimes. So I can send some information about that, but it's important that we think about those that don't really have much around these times as well. I think the last update for me right now, actually, does anyone have any questions? I kind of sped through that, but I just wanted to just open it up really quickly.
You did great, Jeremy. Thank you very much. And I think you're absolutely we would welcome your involvement, and as well as Officer Gibbons, PD in some form, and Kyoko's work in the forum. If you stick around, we're going to give a little bit of an update of where we've arrived with our discussions and what our next steps might be. So if you can stick around, please do. I think, continuing the incredible work that you're doing is absolutely necessary and vital to the continuing outcomes that we have here that are hopefully improving year after year. And if you have that information about various the door, things like that, if you want to throw it in the chat right here for folks, that's great. Or send it to Angel and Carly, and that can circulate with some of our community news. Welcome, Diane. I see you've arrived. Thank you very much for joining us. Are there any other questions for Jeremy from members of the board, the committee? From the public? Okay. Okay. And I see Kyoka noting some new heroes were named by young folks in our community. I'm not sure where that came from, but thank you, Kyoka. I think it is important to have recognition.
In the media very soon.
Okay, all right, we'll stay tuned. If there's a press release or news related information, please send and to the office. Do we have a representative from the Department of Transportation? Lyle has not been present the past couple of months.
He is not present. I actually spoke with him this morning, specifically asking him if he would be attending, and he gave a very non-committal answer. So I would not be surprised if he does. I don't believe he's gonna attend. Sorry about my dog.
That's okay. Your dog is making the right response. How I feel too. So okay, so we'll look for Lyle next month. And if Lyle can't make it, maybe there is another representative from DOT that could grace us with their presence and provide us with some updates with regard to our district and public safety transportation related DOT issues. That would be wonderful to hear from them.
This is Diane.
Diane?
Yeah, I just want to add that the DOT just announced their acting commissioner, Margaret Forgione. For those who are not familiar, Margaret used to work with CB11 when she was the borough president. Borough director for Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's great to know.
That is good to know.
Great to know. There's a point I'll bring up at the end of the meeting in our announcement section that might also play into Margaret's role. I know she's taken over for Holly Trottenberg, who departed or will depart on December 11th. So there is some time of that acting role that will be essential to make sure that we have a responsive DOT representation here. Thank you, Diane.
Yeah, I just want to add, Jessica, for those who are new to the board, Margaret was responsible for the Second Avenue and First Avenue bus lanes, the reconfiguration of 135th Street traffics. She was also responsible, or worked with us, many of the safety improvements around the 106th Street, where you have, the borders that protect people from standing when they come through the tunnels. So she's very familiar with East Harlem, and hopefully she'll remain and we'll work with you for the remaining year that she will be there. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you very much, Diane. So in lieu of our Department of Transportation report, we have some good history from seasoned board members. From the Office of Assembly Member Robert Rodriguez, I believe we have Muriel Sanchez is going to offer an update. Is that right?
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Hi, everyone. Marieli from Assembly Member Robert Rodriguez's office. Carly asked me to join the meeting to just comment on the Assembly member's statement regarding congestion pricing. And so, as you guys may know, back in 2019, the state legislature passed in the budget a congestion pricing plan that would create a toll from 60th Street on the east side all the way down to like the Lower Manhattan, the Battery Tunnel area. And so the plan was supposed to go into effect at the start of next year. But the federal government has still not approved the congestion pricing plan. And so the state has not been able to put together the panel that will decide the quantity of the toll, the exemptions, and all the kind of logistics. And, we are very concerned about the kind of delay, considering that we are hearing from the MTA that they are, at the brink of cutting service, which obviously impacts our district heavily. And they're talking about, cutting back bus service as well as train service. And laying off, I think the number we heard last was 9,000 workers. It's just, in the middle of a pandemic, it's the last thing we need is a cutback in service and or employment. And so we're really pushing ahead, trying to get this to be a priority of the new administration and working with our congressional delegation to ensure that it becomes that. But I'll take any questions or comments or concerns about the plan.
Thank you, Marielle, for bringing that back to the table. It has been put on hold, and I think you couldn't be more right about how essential public transportation is to folks in East Harlem. So any comments or questions from members of the committee? And any comments, questions from members of the public? Okay. Marielle, maybe we could ask that you return and update us in a couple of months after the federal transition has happened, and with any stopgap measures in support of public transportation, and any updates with regards to the congestion rollout. We would appreciate hearing from you on that front if there is a forward motion.
Yeah, so, of course. Jessica, I'm so sorry. I forgot to mention one thing. Shame on me. I just want to shout out the 2-3, the 2-5, and PSA 5. They did an incredible job helping to deliver food and meal kits to families the week of Thanksgiving. And so thank you guys. And yes, I will return in a couple of months to talk about congestion pricing some more.
Great. Okay. The good deeds are endless, I imagine. If we could only recognize them all, we would be here all night, I'm sure. And then some. Thank you very much. And so that is the end of our informational update. If any and all of you can stick around, there will be some ongoing conversations that relate to some of the issues that have come up in our discussion just now. But we're going to, I believe, hear briefly from the representative Ashwini Chabra from Voice Scooters about a council-approved pilot project that is taking shape. And please correct me if I am wrong about that, but Ashwini, hello and welcome. If you can introduce yourself, and please, if you can, it's 7:21 now. If you can stick to under 10 minutes so we have time for some questions. I am absolutely sure we will have any number of questions about the service that your company will be potentially offering. So take it away.
Certainly, and thank you, and great to be with you all tonight and to hear about some of the initiatives that are underway in East Harlem. What I want to talk to you about tonight is the city's upcoming e-scooter pilot program. If you have been following the news, this is something that the state legislature authorized this summer when they legalized electric scooters and electric bikes, which up until now, different classes of e-bikes were not legal in New York, nor were e-scooters. That has now officially been changed into law. The city council followed up with legislation that authorized a 1-year pilot in New York, a 1 to 2 year pilot in New York, and authorized the DOT to start that process, which they have. They put out a request for expressions of interest last month. Responses are due next week, and they will then look to be launching this pilot program in the spring of 2021. I realize I'm speaking to a Manhattan community board, and if you know what the legislation says, it actually exempts Manhattan from the scooter program. And so this may not directly impact you all, but of course, as New Yorkers, we travel outside of our districts. And so it was something that I wanted to alert you to, that you're probably going to be seeing scooters around the city in greater numbers than you have been. They're going to be branded with private companies. So right now people are riding around on their own scooters, but pretty soon you will have a number of vendors similar to the City Bike program that will have scooters for hire on the street. So you will be able to, with your smartphone, unlock these scooters, take them for a ride, and end your ride, and you're charged in the same way that you would be for a City Bike ride. The areas of operation, as I mentioned, Manhattan is excluded from the operational zone for the time being. The pilot program that DOT is authorized to run is to focus on areas that are otherwise underserved by other options, which DOT has told us means it's really outside the City Bike operational area. So really northern parts of the Bronx, parts of Queens, Brooklyn, Staten Island that don't have City Bike right now is where the scooter pilot will operate. I'm here tonight because, one, to flag for folks that this is a pilot program that is coming, but also to solicit any input on what you think you would like in the form of this pilot program, because again, as New Yorkers, you're gonna be in parts of the city where people will be using this service. I'm here on behalf of Voi Scooters, which is a private company. They're based in Sweden. New York would be their first market. They're currently operating in more than 50 cities across Europe, have had tremendous success in England over the summer, which also finally legalized scooter usage, and they take a really bespoke approach to their service. Really want to meet with the community before ever putting a vehicle down on the street, and so really wanted to just take a few minutes here. I can share some slides if that's of interest, so you see what the vehicle looks like, etc. But really, I think if you've seen people riding around on scooters, you kind of have an idea of what we're talking about. These are the ones you stand on, not the mopeds, not the Revels that you've seen on the streets. These are sort of the two-wheel stand-up ones that kind of look like they're a bike without a seat. But really just wanted to introduce the fact that this program is going to be starting in the spring, answer any questions about Voi in particular, but then really would love any input from folks who have experience with scooters on the streets about, or have used any of these services in other cities as to what you think we should keep in mind as we're designing the program for New York.
Ashwini, thank you very much for coming to us with this inquiry. In a way, I think you're asking for input before we're being asked for support or permission or acceptance. I see, Michelle, I see your hand. I might just try to clarify and see if we can set a good course with time in mind. There is some additional committee business that is very much related to what you're bringing to us here. And just for, so that you're aware, the committee had been previously discussing taking some action to voice a recognition of a lack of regulation for these types of micromobility, particularly the pedal assist e-bikes and e-scooters. The bill that you are referencing that allows municipalities to regulate locally, but permits these on a state level, separates them into 3 classes, if I'm correct. One as pedal assist bikes that max out at 20 miles an hour, 2 throttle powered bikes that also max out at 20 miles per hour, and class 3 being throttle powered bikes that max out at 25 miles per hour, which is also the vehicular speed limit on local roads in Manhattan. So e-scooters capped at 15 miles per hour are also legalized statewide. And that was signed into law in March, if I understand correctly. Is that right?
I think that's right.
Yeah. So maybe I'll open the floor up to questions. Do you, if we're at 7:28 and I don't want to go too long, would you feel shorted if we didn't go into a presentation by you? And maybe if other committee members want to request that, then maybe that would be something we could entertain. But perhaps a discussion might be productive, both for you and for us at this point. Is that okay?
I think that would be great. Yeah, really wanted to reiterate. Yeah, it is sort of an inquiry form as we're sort of thinking about what is the particular flavor of this service for New York City. Hearing from people who share our streets about what their apprehensions might be. Perhaps you've got a bad experience with people on private scooters or on e-bikes, and that's something that we want to make sure that if we come to the city, that is something we're addressing.
Yeah, and just a comment before I turn it over to Michelle here for her question. Europe is a different culture of streets and micromobility, and New York is trying to adapt and incorporate and adjust and evolve. But I think there needs to be a recognition, and for a pilot, starting where there is a gap seems like a smart move. At the same time, figuring out how to share our streets in a safe and equitable way among all different, not only modes of mobility, but levels of accessibility is also equally important. And I think enforcement and regulation, safety, and security. We heard from Officer Gibbons about the rate of crime related to city bikes. Those are all things that you should definitely hear and consider as you launch your pilot. So Michelle, go ahead with your question.
Okay, I know there's a lot of pros and cons to your new business. However, I was just curious to find out, since there is such a large crime rate with the e-bikes, have you found a way to have the e-scooters docked in a fashion so that it would actually work and they won't be stolen as easily?
Yeah, I mean, it's and by no means is this a concern in New York alone. Boy operates in lots of large cities across Europe, and it should come as no surprise, but vehicle theft is an issue everywhere. For New York in particular, what we are contemplating is sort of a hybrid approach where you would have docks where you could park the scooters. So if you've seen scooters in other cities in the U.S., you'll often see them sort of free floating. These are dockless vehicles. You don't actually have to dock them in the way that you do a city bike. And that can lead to a little bit of chaos on the sidewalks. And so our approach really is for New York and for cities like New York, that may not be the way to go in every neighborhood. And so there may be some maybe more residential parts of the city. I'm thinking of Bay Ridge or parts of the city where maybe you don't have as much pedestrian traffic, where it's okay, you can designate and geofence using GPS specific areas where you can lock the wheels of the vehicle and you don't have to put it into a dock. But we will equip all the scooters with cable locks. And so anywhere you are going to end your trip, we will request that users will lock them to a bike rack or to some other hardware, similar to how you would park your own private bike. somewhere. So there is that added element of the physical lock that's in addition to the wheels automatically locking when you end your trip. And they've found varying degrees of success with that model. And then, of course, all of these vehicles are very valuable to us as a company. And so we have pretty granular GPS on them. And so stealing one of these is probably not a good, it's probably not the thing you want to steal on the street, because we can track down where it is. And we've made it so that it's very hard to disable that. It's buried deep into the vehicle. And so we think that the combination of having a hardware lock on the vehicles and our ability to track where they are at any time is going to be a theft deterrent. That doesn't mean people won't do it. It doesn't mean that people won't vandalize the scooters. What we found is, and we've done pretty significant partnerships with local police departments in other cities, is that there is a learning curve. People get something new, they go crazy over it, they get it out of their system after a few months, and the incident rate declines after that, especially if a community embraces the new service as something that is of value to them. And that's where I think offering our service in parts of the city that don't have City Bike to start with is actually a good move on the part of the city council and on the part of DOT. Is these are parts of the city that have been deprived of mobility options, and to have scooters sort of be the exclusive domain of those neighborhoods, our hope is we'll create a sense of ownership over the service, and so hopefully that contributes to lower rates of theft and vandalism.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. I do want to bring up, perhaps about a year ago, we had maybe less than, Revel came to us and told us about their service, and that they were coming to provide their service in our neighborhood, in our district. You know, there has been a string of fatalities and accidents, very serious safety concerns. I know part of our committee's interest is in protecting motor vehiclists from incurring any, in any sort of issues of accident, making sure that there is insurance and registration. I imagine that your service would have all of those liability issues covered for riders and incidents, that sort of thing. Can you speak a little bit more to the safety, measures that the scooter will encourage? And I think you're absolutely right that the kind of the culture around the use of these things, my God, do they look like fun? But how to use them safely to be able to serve a part of the mobility need where it may not be met so comfortably otherwise is part of what the service provision aspect of what you're offering, besides a business model, should be about here in New York.
That's actually a big part of it. So if you've seen people riding on scooters around the city, those are private owned scooters. Those are not, those do not have a speed limit on those. And so I've seen people going by on those at 30 miles an hour. I think there are some that go even faster than that. As you noted at the outset, the legislation limits the speed at which these shared scooters can go at 15 miles an hour. So they go a lot slower. It's designed specifically to be at about the speed of bicyclists in the bike lane, and that is where these scooters will belong. And so, in fact, when we start in any market, we lower the speed limit even further to about 10 miles an hour, because we know people don't have their sea legs. And so getting familiar with how the throttle works, how the brake works, how to have your balance, especially on New York streets where you're going to have to maneuver around potholes and sometimes car doors open. And so doing that and learning how to ride at 10 miles an hour for your first few rides before you're even able to go up to 15, we found results in a lot fewer incidents. I mentioned geofencing earlier, and I think that's a big component of our safety operations. We have what I've been describing as the next gen of GPS. So, GPS is it's sort of a military system. It was never really designed for urban use, and it's not very effective in cities. There is an urban canyon effect that sort of the signal bounces off the building, and so so much of what other scooter companies rely on is really imprecise technology, and so they haven't been able to solve for how do you keep people off the sidewalks, because the GPS is just not precise enough to differentiate between sidewalk and bike lane. It's precise enough to tell you that you're heading up north on Fifth Avenue, or you're heading south on
Second.
south on Fifth, or you're heading north on Sixth. But it's not as precise as you need it to be if you're trying to keep people off the sidewalk. The next generation of this, which combines 4 different satellite systems, not just GPS, with camera vision. So each of our vehicles are equipped with 4 cameras that then bounce signals off of nearby buildings, gives you a lot more precise reading of where you are. It's the kind of technology that car companies have started in utilizing, but is a bit overkill for scooters because it's really expensive. But it's something that we thought was worth investing in, especially if you're going to operate cities like New York, cities like London, cities like Berlin, where Voy is operating. And so with that level of precision, we're able to see if you are in the bike lane, or if you're in the traffic lane, or if you're on the sidewalk, and we can control the operation of the scooter based off of that. So if we see someone's on a sidewalk, we slow the scooter down till it's 0, and it basically becomes a paperweight, and then you have to walk it back into the bike lane or onto the street in order to utilize it. So I think that's a big step towards ensuring safety of pedestrians and other people who have to use our sidewalks. Scooters don't belong on the sidewalks, certainly not in a city like New York, and we finally have a means of enforcing that. We also have built into the app this concept of a helmet selfie. So if you want to ride the scooter, you can't unlock the vehicle unless you send us a picture of you wearing the helmet, and we will outfit helmets on the scooters themselves. And so initially, at least, people have to put the helmet on so that they can unlock the vehicle. What we are experimenting with is, again, utilizing this camera vision technology, is a camera to detect whether you keep your helmet on. Because I think we've seen from the experience of mopeds is great, people take that selfie, they'll unlock the scooter, they'll ride the moped rather, they'll ride, but they'll take the helmet off. And so we're still experimenting with if we can figure out a way that we can detect you're keeping the helmet on at all times. And then as when it comes to parking, I think that's the third leg of this. One challenge that creates safety challenge. One issue that creates safety challenges is people parking the scooters on the sidewalk, in the wheelchair ramp, or in places that get underfoot. And by designating specific parking spaces and having the precision of the GPS to be able to detect within a meter where the scooter is, we're able to keep it out of the public right of way, so people can walk. And then there's the furniture zone where bike racks are, where hydrants are, where parking meters are, and that's where the scooters would be parked. But we also are going to be proposing to DOT that we designate space on the street for parking racks, so that really the scooters don't ever even start on the sidewalk, because we found that if the scooter doesn't start the trip on the sidewalk, you don't ride on the sidewalk. And so we've got a few different solutions that we think are belt and suspenders to keep them on the street and off the sidewalk, and have people wearing helmets at all times.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we have, hearing from you, it gives us maybe some hope that and it sounds like technology seems to be the answer to a lot of these enforcement and regulatory challenges on the street. That may not be something that everybody is necessarily comfortable with today, but it is 2020. So I guess we have to get used to that. If you don't mind, Ashwini, I'll give a last call for questions. And then do you have an ask for us, or this was informational purposes, which we appreciate very much, and to start the dialogue? You're welcome to come back if you kind of, narrow in closer to home and the exclusion of Manhattan becomes a different question. I think hearing again from you about some of the successes, if those things happen in the outer boroughs, we have unique challenges here because of the density and the way that people move through our district. And I think the accessibility, not physical accessibility, but this being a kind of equity price point question of who gets to use e-scooters is also something that would be on the table of how do we make this technology and mobility option something that our community members can use as easily as hopping on the bus, or the partnership between NYCHA and City Bike. I think that's something that enables young folks to participate in healthy mobility options that is both fun, but also sets them up for a culture of using those things throughout their life. So I think we need to move on to some other items, but would welcome you to come back and update us on voice scooters and what you find. If there are any questions from other committee members or members of the public. Nope. Thank you very much.
I appreciate the opportunity. This was purely informational. As a resident of Manhattan myself, I'm looking forward to when the law does permit scooters in Manhattan, and so maybe I'll be back here and having a slightly different conversation at some point too. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
A year from now, sounds good.
Great.
So, Carly, we have up next. Am I wrong? We're going to talk about the proposed fare changes, and it's MTA's biannual, every 2 years. They review the fares and have a series of public hearings on their proposals to raise fares, crossing charges for bridges, and other related policies. There is, I will offer some more detailed information about when the public hearings are for this. There are 3 or 4 opportunities if anybody has something to say about what MTA is proposing, and I can just briefly, if it's helpful, looking through. There are some increases in base single lag fare being proposed, but the way that MTA puts out this potential increase is a series of what ifs or potential balancing mechanisms. So they don't say they're going to do any one thing, but there are a number of options for different types of fare payment. Unlimited Metro cards would potentially increase. The 7-day increase would go from, say, $33 to $34.75 if pay per ride is increased, or from $33 to $36 for a 7-day unlimited ride if pay per ride is not an increase. So there's a lot of contingencies, and I think access to transit and affordable access to transit is something that we cannot advocate for enough here. I know vouchers have been something that have been a point of statement from other members of the board in the past. I'm not sure if anybody feels strongly about what is being proposed now. And Carly has shared with you the links. The biggest thing that stuck out to me was an increase, proposed potential increase from the current $1 fee for a new Metro card to increase that fee for a new Metro card to $3, up to $3. That being said, seniors and customers with disability paratransit zero fare discount policies will remain unchanged. So that will not be challenged at all. And like I said, there are 3 opportunities to sign up to speak at a public hearing through the month of December that I will share again when we go back to this in announcements. And this is like I said, happens every 2 years. I think the state of transit right now is pretty dire if we're being faced with service cuts, but very often infrastructure investment is one of the ways that the economy gets stimulated in any economic recovery. So it may not be great in the very short term, but I think that there is a recognition of the importance of public transportation, especially for a city like New York, to thrive and support its community. So it may not be great in the short term, but I have full faith that support for public transit will come back, along with the types of intermodal mobility that we just heard from, and the rise of bikes and scooters and everything else that doesn't fly yet, but in between. Any questions from committee members? Questions from the public? Okay. So we're at 10 minutes to 8. Whatever that means, I think we have a couple of old business items just to touch on. And we touched on it a bit, hearing from the folks from Boy, but I think with Jose being not present this month here, it would behoove us to table our action and discussion about the electric vehicle regulation. I might just offer some numbers that that I found, that in 2020 alone, bicycle sales increased by about 150%. E-scooters have increased by somewhere between 100 and 300%, and e-bike sales have increased by 600%. So the popularity is only increasing. As I mentioned when the gentleman from Boy spoke, there are different classes of these mobility options, and they are supposed to be regulated to move at certain speeds. I think the sticking point in our previous conversations was that there really needs to be some sort of mechanism for registration and insurance so that drivers are not put in jeopardy when they're out sharing road. Some of the issues that came up in conversation about making sure that pedestrian safety is taken into consideration is also equally as important. So if there are any objections to tabling our drafting of a resolution towards some statement on electric vehicle regulation until January, please voice that concern right now. Otherwise, we will revisit it and see it again in January. Okay, and so last month we had a great discussion about, and I'm glad to see Jeremy, you're still on the line here, and Officer Gibbons, and to have heard from Kyoka. Our discussion about planning and hosting a Know Your Rights forum. I think that's something that has been done in the past and should continue to happen periodically from all sorts of different organizations, whether it's a community board, a faith-based org, an agency, or the PD themselves. I think there are so many parties involved, and it's important to really craft what our Know Your Rights forum should be about. I did get some feedback from other board members who are not on public safety, but who do care about this. They offered some thoughts. I have started some shared documents in our files, and Yolanda has also offered to reach out to some of her faith-based colleagues who have done these forums in the past. I think if anyone is interested in seeing what research has been done and where we arrived, there's a couple of 3 points that were in last month's minutes. The next steps would be starting some outreach. One of the most important things that came up was to make sure that we focus on, in some respect, particular rights for undocumented people in a scenario-based situation, how to avoid self-incrimination, and steps to protect oneself. I think there was interest in both general information, but also specific concerns related to East Harlem. Involving making sure that the youth voice was at the table, that CBOs and other faith-based orgs were a part of the discussion, along with ACLU or NYCLU, in addition to any sort of other community outreach that we would do. Jeremy, if you don't mind, we would reach out in the next couple of months and try to figure out how to shape this discussion in the right kind of way. And also, I think if any committee members have thoughts about timing, I think, March and April as a setup for when the weather gets nice, we all get back outside, maybe we're all vaccinated. Right. Things are going to change in the spring. And I think to set up a conversation, or even if it needs to be a series of conversations, that's what this should do, to launch us back into how we need to be aware as we kind of go back to conducting business as usual.
I definitely agree, and I don't want to speak for. I'm sure that others have ideas, and they've done these in the past. But I think that, and Kyoga's not here anymore, but she would speak on them. I think when, and I really hope things get better. And I know winter's going to come and going to keep us inside for good and bad reasons. But hopefully when COVID has died down come March, I'd really like to see these conversations be also a place of like. They could be something like called different. They could be like healing spaces, having people come together. Yes, I do like Know Your Rights, but I would love the youth input because they always have great ideas about how to like make it maybe not like more catchy, but like where more people can be more like participation. I know we'd like definitely be at that table, whatever that topic is. So you said undocumented self-incrimination. I already see like we could have someone from our immigration affairs unit. Self-incrimination that's a little vague, and I feel like maybe with our office and NYPD we could definitely assist on that. So I'm all for it. So you got me.
That's great, and I think with regards to your kind of how to frame this as opposed to Know Your Rights, Osendi, who I don't think she's still here, but offered a great resource by Cooper and Fullilove called Enforcers to Guardians. So I think guardianship, really what we're looking for as a model, police brutality being a public health issue. We all know what public health is now. So I think that as an outcome and a framework might put us in a really proactive place. So I'd like to go with that if that sounds good to others on the committee and representatives. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
just want
very
to, I just want to say there's,
much.
I think there's so much potential to it, so I'm all for it. And that even put up an idea like, we could talk about so many things. So what jumped off to me was even if it was, public corruption, like if there's someone that has an instance in their community, not necessarily East Harlem, but in other parts where if there's someone that has a case with that was, police brutality, something like that, knowing your rights as an individual, not being afraid. And because we just want to make the community safer, and it works on both. And if that's what made me feel like you saying the guardians are the protectors, or I'm saying it wrong, but I think we have a position as well as the NYPD to help out at both ends of this right now. So we'll be in touch. Yeah.
Great, sounds good. Thank you. Thank you,
I
Jeremy. And
just wanted to second, and not just second, but also just mention that this could be, a discussion that can come from different ends, right? So I think similar to what Jeremy was saying, but that, we're looking at it from a constituent end, that we're looking at it from the lens of somebody who has, been in contact with police in some way. We're coming at it from the eyes of the police, like just looking at this from different views and then offering information from different lenses. And maybe that's not all in one session, like maybe they're different sessions, right? Where you're saying, okay, this session is about this group of people and this session is about this, and offering conversations that way. Because I do think as our committee and everything that's gone on this year outside of COVID, that there is a lot of discussion that we could have around where you are in your space right now and what has happened to people, and then also how do we work with our community members. So I mean, there's a big conversation that can be had. It's all about planning and moving forward with it, because I feel like we've kind of had these conversations before. So it's just a matter of like moving forward and actually putting some things into play.
thank you, Marissa. Do you agree that sort of a March, April, maybe series of conversations would be well timed for where we'll be at that point, without any other kind of global events? There was a point when we didn't know what was going to happen next, but I feel like there's a pretty clear path to where we may be come early spring. Does that sound like it would be a good target?
I mean, time frame, yeah, that sounds good. I mean, providing that we can do everything that, like we need to do. But I think that, in regards to coming up on the summertime and coming up to the fact that people will then kind of be out again, no matter what the COVID situation is, the spring would be good to lead up to that. So.
Great. And I appreciate your kind of having different perspectives. I think that's essential to having this dialogue be productive. So thank you. Yes, I know we've touched on it and we've rehashed it. That's why it is really old business now. So I look forward to moving forward in the next couple weeks and early January so that we can have some significant progress early next year. So with that, I think we've got some new business. I'm not sure. New business, we have a couple of, I'm not sure whether they actually classify as new business. They're sort of new business / announcement points for consideration, and good to see our, thank you, Carly, for bringing Jennifer to the table here. So I was last night at the Human Services Committee meeting and happened to drop in right as one of our new board members, Jennifer Meyer, was beginning to explain an initiative that she is taking up with through the Human Services Committee, and had thought that it would be a good crossover with public safety. And so, Michelle, I think this dovetails with your very first comment following on Officer Gibbons' report and the sort of the mental health challenges that we sometimes see play out on our street. Jennifer, I don't know, typically, announcements are 2 minutes, but we've allotted 10 minutes for sort of new business discussion. Xavier, I know Xavier Santiago, our Committee Board 11 Vice Chair, is also here and is the Vice Chair of the Human Services Committee as well. So I think there is a lot of representation in recognizing what the crossover is between public safety, our streets, where our street culture plays out, and some of the challenges that we see particularly here. So Jennifer, do you want to speak for just maybe 2 or 3 minutes about the initiative that you're planning to launch, and if there are any questions from the board, we can maybe follow with a couple minutes of questions?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much. And I just want to preface this by saying this was like an idea that I just kind of had last week and went to Xavier and Nye, who's chair of human services, about. So it's definitely not a full-fledged plan yet, but I think that's also in a way kind of the beauty of it, because there's a lot of wiggle room if you kind of see areas that you think we can improve on and things like that. But mainly I work a lot with different CBOs within the community, and some of my colleagues and I have noticed that the organizations serving those that are involved in the justice system, or organizations surrounding policing and mass incarceration, are particularly struggling. And it's been a pretty significant difference that we've noticed compared to other organizations that we work with surrounding homelessness and just different issues like that. So we noticed that they're struggling just reaching the community members that they normally serve, with funding, with everything that has happened because of COVID. In that these are significant struggles, and there's really an increase in need and urgency for their services. So it's kind of like a double hit there with all of these struggles, and then they're seeing just a greater need for their services in general. So I talked last week with Xavier and Nye about creating possibly a working group in collaboration with public safety to see how, if at all, CB11 can support and elevate the needs of these organizations. So really not trying to reinvent the wheel or try to create something new, but just to see how we can help them and maybe elevate their voices and their needs within the community. We know they already do amazing work and have been doing it for years and decades, but just to see kind of, it looks like there's particular struggles now, and we know there's some increase in certain crimes, and we think there might be a link there a little bit, and just to see how we can best support them and best support our community members and neighbors. So again, I'm still working out the details of exactly what this might be. So it's really, I think the first step will just be further talking with these organizations and seeing if all these anecdotal evidence and conversations that we're having, if there is something deeper there. Right now, there's been quite a bit of evidence, and we've been hearing it a lot, but just to see what's there. And I would just love to talk to anyone who's interested, maybe helping with this first step, or if you have any contacts that you think I should talk with. But I'm hoping the next meeting in January, maybe in February, to have more of a robust update and plan for you.
So thanks very much, Jennifer. It's I see a couple of questions. I'm not sure who was first, Melissa or Xavier. Officer Gibbons, I saw your hand go up and come down, so I'm not sure if you want to raise your hand. Let us know. I think one of the things that is essential is to better understand kind of how the committees might work together and what the goals of each committee might be as complementary. So I'm not sure that I think working with CBOs and understanding the intensity of needs and how that relates to various points of service provision and street culture is where the two committees, the purview of the two committees meet. So I would look forward to having some subsequent conversations to better understand how the purview of public safety can, with a set of goals, work in tandem with the set of goals that Human Services has to kind of understand how that's in support of a larger board-wide set of goals. So maybe, Xavier, I see you've got your camera on. Maybe we'll start with you and then go to Marissa. Is that okay?
I'll defer to Marissa real quick and then I'll chime in just to hear because I may have a...
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah.
Really quick, and thank you, Jessica. Really quick, and thank you, Xavier. I just wanted to ask Jennifer, sounds like a great idea. If you possibly could just share whatever list that you have so that we make sure that you have everyone that I guess you need within the community, that might be a good idea just for us to make sure that all of the contacts that we know or all of the organizations that we know that might want to participate are within your catchment. That's it. Thank you. Thanks for the idea.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'll do that. I don't have it on my work computer right now, but I'll definitely make sure to get that out.
Xavier?
Yeah, thank you, Marissa. Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Jennifer, for presenting this and last night and for taking it on last minute. I know we have a typical protocol, and you know, during times of COVID, we pivot as a board, and we have some flexibility. I think and to give a little bit more light on the conversation, was that we do have a 125th Street task force that's headed up by our council member with other members who are participating. The community board sits on that as well. And in that conversation, this is a starting point, it's a jumping off point, to keep it very, without getting into the weeds so much, is that we're seeing there is an interest in that area, a focus in that area. There is a problem. And I think what we have fostered in the community board is that see a need, fill a need. And there is a need that we are trying to address, and we're having that initial conversation. We try to onboard our membership and saying, hey, what do you see? You getting your feet wet? Let's jump in. So I think what we saw during our conversation with Human Services, and Jessica, thank you for attending last night. And I think that there is a massive human mental health, human need component, but also there is a public safety and transportation component that we don't want to criminalize mental health issues, homelessness, and things of this ilk. However, there are certain things that are relevant, such as drug dealing. I'll not be as eloquent as most, but I'll say it, let's call a spade what a spade is. There's some criminal elements there. So we're having a conversation. That was why we said we need to loop in public safety and transportation, but our position as a board has been, we have to find ways to not criminalize, but rather help others, and then and have that conversation. So this is, as they say, a jumping off point and conversation. And I appreciate Jennifer for throwing this out and saying, hey, I want to do some good work. And that's what we need more of. So I'll pass it back to you, Jessica. That was a little backstory, if you will. And if there's people, or this committee wants to have more of a conversation, or as Jennifer fleshes it out, bring it back in January and we converse back and forth. This is where the good work begins. And this will help if we find, and for those members of the public that are still with us, if it is to become a task force or a subcommittee, and that will go up to our chair, Nilsa Rama, to be delegated, or if it's a working group that we liaise and there's a committee running point, that's a different part of the process. But this is good work. Thank you, Jennifer, for bringing it up. And yeah, so I'll leave it to you, Jessica, to manage any conversation. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Xavier. I see we have one hand from Diane Collier, and I might just mention that there have been a couple of public safety committee members who expressed interest in a similar conversation around vulnerable populations at the intersection of public safety. And Osendi is not here anymore, he's gone this evening, but we have started to have some communication on that front. So I hope that they'd be thrilled to hear Jennifer about your initiative. Diane? You're muted still, sorry.
So Jennifer, I just need a little bit more clarification As Xavier has mentioned, there are and have been several task force over the time that I've been on the community board, more or less addressing the issues of mental health as well as the issues surrounding the homelessness, not just on East 125th Street, but clearly throughout the corridor. I mean, throughout East Harlem, as everyone knows, no matter which corridor you walk on, you will see some type of homeless encampment. And true, we don't like to criminalize, we don't like to enforce issues, but we are facing situations where many of the people who live in the community, if they're possible, they're leaving. The businesses are folding up. You have property owners who are currently in a decision develop or not develop in East Harlem. So I really want to ask you, who is going to be at the table that you with this new task force or working group, and what will be the goals? And maybe you don't have the answers right now, Jennifer, but that is something that I'm very much interested in, not because I sit on a board that does certain things on 125th Street to improve it, but because I'm a resident. And this has been a problem plaguing East Harlem as a whole for more than 10, 20 years.
Yeah, so I would say I don't have a super great answer to that, just because we're just kind of getting started and figuring out. But I think there kind of should be a say from everyone here at the table of when having these conversations. I will say there is a lot of crime that happens due to mental illness, and then there's a lot that or because of drugs, and there's a lot that doesn't necessarily happen because of that. So I think addressing it from all angles and not just focused on maybe certain areas of certain people that have a stigma attached to them, but really looking across the board at where is this occurring, who, what's happening, and just all of the organizations involved. So I think going beyond, especially I think some of the organizations that we traditionally think of, and really looking at what kind of everyone in the community is doing, and whoever I think this is I'm bringing it here and to the community board in general, because I know we have a diverse audience here. So if there is anyone that's interested, I put my email in the chat. If you have certain organizations that and again, I'll send out the list of ones that I have, but if there's any organizations or people or just community members that are really involved that you think should be here at the table, then definitely I would love to chat with them. And then however our meetings with this group go from here, invite them to those meetings as well.
I think one of the most important things, and Diane, to your point, the long history of having done this work is really, it's super difficult to get an understanding of, because there is no historian who documents all of the efforts that have accumulated over the past quarter century, just to sort of say that's our window. From the 80s to now, perhaps.
So to your point, Jessica, and to Jennifer and to everybody else on this call, several years ago, and I don't see the DA anymore on the call, the DA department had a monthly meeting of all of the programming service providers in East Harlem. It was ran by the late Maria de la Rosa, for those who remember her. And they would come together to discuss issues, not just with the programs themselves, but obviously issues where they can have an impact on any public safety issues. So I'm not sure if that's where you're leaning, Jennifer, but it's been a facsimile, okay? And you're right, Jessica, there is no written history of all this. Unfortunately, it lies within either the people that were there at the time, or it pops up again in a different iteration. And that's all I wanted to bring to the board. For those of us who've been here such a long time, Jennifer, we love new ideas, but we want to see some progress made, because clearly very little has been done in the 20 years that many of us have been dealing with this.
Yeah, and I would even say that I think with COVID, there's been backslide in some cases of things that used to be able to happen can no longer happen. And just with speaking with organizations, there was one who was we used to host just a group, a support group once a week, but they can no longer do that. And that small things like that, even I think are great to know, is if there's no longer support groups for formerly incarcerated people, what are the possible implications of that for them, for their families, for the community, for crime, for anything. And it could be just as simple as that due to COVID, they can't physically meet anymore. And what does that look like and what does that mean? And so I don't know exactly what we'll find in this, if it will be a lot of small things like that, bigger things, I imagine a mix. But I think with COVID, we're kind of in territory that, to my knowledge, has not been explored that much recently in the past, however, 10 months that we've been in this.
So I might just, it's 8:17. If we can look to close this discussion, maybe in the next 3 minutes. Xavier, I see your hand up again. Did you have another comment? I think, you know, there is an administrative change that's going to take place in the next year or two. And Diane, I think your institutional knowledge, right, to call it, you know, it's not a transcript, it's not a set of files somewhere, but you, community members like you, Xavier, and others who have been doing this work for decades, to be patient with new voices trying to mine that knowledge, to be able to then be proactively supportive in advancing the common goals is what I'm all for. And however that, you know, however that investigative work needs to happen to make sure that the right people are at the table as we continue to move forward in support of continuing to define what those common goals are as they progress. Hopefully there is progress happening, and but it is a moving target, and there are a lot of interrelated issues, not just public safety, but street culture and storefronts and, you know, commerce and legal and illegal, and how that happens and where that happens. So I think, Jennifer, your perspective from the kind of the human services service provider aspect, and then some of the other kind of points of infrastructure, it's good work that needs to be done, and I'm glad to hear from you now today. So hopefully we can continue the conversation and figure out a way forward. Xavier, did you want to have a last word here?
Yeah, thank you, Diane, for mentioning that. And I think, and thank you, Jennifer, for bringing it up. I think we're just trying to activate people. And I think you raising that is extremely helpful and beneficial, and especially, and without jumping into announcements, because that's Jessica to lead us to, but I think remembering Edwin Marcial, who ushered in many cultural events and played a huge part, and that we need to pass on that institutional knowledge, whether it is 10, 20, 30, 40 years, it doesn't matter. And that's not something you write down in a book. And I value your input, Diane. And thank you, Jennifer, for taking it up. And I think this is a ongoing conversation, all members of the public that are still with us, because it is getting late. We need to have that information, to have the dialogue. It's a continuing dialogue, not a decision being made, but rather, and we put the boxes that need to not just be checked, but completed to the fullest expectations of this community. And you're right for calling that out, that it's not been delivered, and that's our job. And so this is a way we can come together. So thank you. I'll pass it back to you, Jessica. I just want to make sure that we bring it all together as one in one fell swoop, and be able to get deliverables. That's what I care about, other results. And we're all part of that formula. So
sounds good. Thank you, Xavier, very much.
Conversation. Thank you.
And Diane, I'm sure we'll reach out to pick your brain if we have any questions that are specific about the history and knowledge. And Jennifer, I'll follow up, and then we can figure out what the best way to continue to communicate is. And if any other committee members are interested in continuing to figure out how that moves forward, please reach out and express some interest. So I think we're on to announcements, and I do hope to wrap up by 8:30, which I think is very reasonable. We covered a lot here. Thank you for bearing with us and continuing to be here. If there, I have a couple of announcements, 2 points of announcement. beyond what we have here. Maybe we'll start with that follow-up on the MTA's hearings, and I'll just provide you the dates. The additional opportunities for speaking at the hearings: Wednesday, December 9th, Monday, December 14th, or Monday, December 21st. If any committee members have serious concerns and want to reach out and aren't able to go and speak, please let me know. Again, this is something that happens every 2 years. In addition to that, we have I'm going to wait on the full board and just offer a couple of points of announcement. Something that has come up at the past 2 full board meetings from the borough president is a sort of inquiry and a soft ask for us to come up with some sort of statement, acknowledgement, letter of support, or resolution in regard to the Municipal Arts Society released a report that called for a champion of the public realm. And I think that is a critical point at some of the intersections of the problem set that we were just talking about a moment ago with human services. But also, I think the unique ecosystem that exists on our East Harlem streets from, and it's not all one thing, from the southern half of the district to the heart of the district, east to west, and up all the way to the northern part of the district and in the triangle. So the borough president has suggested that other boards are putting forward statements relative to this call, and I'm happy to share the report with the committee. I would like to speak with Jose about that first before it were to become any sort of committee business, but it's very much about coordinating the things that happen on our streets, from trash collection and maintenance to green infrastructure and sort of flood zone, where most of East Harlem is in a flood zone, but more so on our streets, some of the overflow from human services issues and other sorts of challenges that we deal with, not to mention open streets, open restaurants, all of those things that COVID has opened us up to, in addition to micromobility that we've heard about. Coupled with that, in last year, City Council mandated that by the end of 2021, DOT put forward a streets master plan, and there is no requirement for contribution from community boards and community members. So I think if East Harlem has, and the strategies being put forward in that master plan are things like particular intersections to look at, different sorts of safety mechanisms such as bulb outs, other sorts of interventions for buses and bikes. But most importantly, I think, are the shared streets potentials, which would be a slower street where cars drive. They can drive through and they can park, but they can only go 5 miles an hour, and other sorts of activities also happen on the street. So that happens downtown Brooklyn, whether there are places in East Harlem that might support that. I think it's on us, if we have the interest and the inclination, to comment on the need for and the City Council mandate for a DOT master plan. Lyle wasn't here. DOT seems to not be so responsive. Diane, it's super encouraging to hear that Margaret has a deep history with East Harlem. And I'm going to continue to ask some questions about whether our input would be welcome and if we have any input. So if you all have any thoughts on a streets master plan and where East Harlem could benefit from some attention at the intersection block by block level, please don't be shy about speaking up. And that's all I have, I believe. Community Board 11 will hold its full board meeting on Tuesday, December 15th at 6:30. So that is next Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. And we hope we will see you all there. I see hands from Xavier and Marissa. So 8:27, let's circle back. Do you guys want to do a toss up again, flip a coin?
Go ahead, Marissa.
Okay. Real quick, I know we're trying to wrap up. I just wanted to know if we could possibly even revisit the parking situation. I live across the street from the mall, and I understand that you know, individuals are doing more of the Instacart and you know, the instant food delivery, which is fine, but it has been increasingly hard for people in the community that live here to park and to find parking. And I've actually spoken with this briefly with Diana Ayala as well. She lives in the neighborhood, and you know, just talking about what can be done. I know that there are other neighborhoods that are looking at certain things, and even outside of New York, like in Philadelphia, there are ways that we can look into this. And so I would love for that to be revisited. And also not only for our area, but also for Metro North and people parking there too. And I also know that there are a lot of people that are looking to get cars or have gotten cars because they don't want to be on public transportation. So this is an issue for a lot more people that actually live in the community. Thank you.
Marissa, I think Carly might be trying to call a point of procedure on me. I think this is just an announcement. If we were to get it on the agenda for January as a discussion, those would be exactly the types of things that we would want to hear and consider.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention, well, in response to that directly, real brief, we are aware of that. The office is aware of it, and I've actually raised the issue with the Assembly Member's office, and they were able to meet with the developer of Blumenfield, the mall that in question, as well as Costco and Instacart, and they're working on a deal so that the Instacart drivers can park inside of the lot. So
that is great. Oh my goodness. Lord,
I wish you were on the call.
Early. Okay.
You know,
Keep
just
us
follow.
posted. Thank you so much.
No problem. And thank you, Carly. Xavier?
So thank you very much. Couple things before I see Carrie King's hand up, which is one of the things I was going to mention. But we've all been through a lot. Things have been very tense. I sent an email out to the entire board with COVID related links, and also in there was NYC Well and a push for everyone that if you're not doing well, if you are not okay, it is okay not to be okay. And we have to accept that and come to peace with this. And as Jessica and I have commiserated, sometimes you need a wiggle break. You need to and just let go a little bit, like I do with my kids. And that's something I share with her. And I appreciate you connecting with me on that. But I think we need to allow ourselves the opportunity to let go. And if you are not feeling well and you need professional help, or if you are just need someone to talk to, I'm here. And we'll be here. But if you need to get connected or just need a pause, we respect that, and we have to work together, because if you are at 100%, you're going to be at 100% for your family, for your community. But if you're not, our job is to make sure we can deliver 100% of the time, and you have to be whole. So that's one point. And before I sign off and hopefully, Jessica, you will pass it to Carrie. Something we've been working on, open streets, massive success. And we're looking at the holiday months because Christmas is coming. I'm looking at the clock. Yes, I know I'm running over, but we want to give the kids a resource. We served so many youth during the Halloween. They enjoyed it so much. We got rained out during the Day of the Dead, but the mass amount of physically distance, abiding by the letter and spirit of the law, and serving our community was fantastic. And we were looking at a couple options about what happens if we have a snowstorm and the Department of Sanitation finally reverted back to us, which was mentioned during my report with full board, And I'm going to pass it back to Jessica, who will hand it off to Carrie, and what would be needed to see if we can create some kind of
Definitely.
tree play street.
Thanks,
Jessica.
thanks, Xavier. Carrie, I'm not sure if you're able to speak. If you can just give 2 minutes about your vision for a city-sanctioned wiggle break along Second Avenue, and what your ask is. I know this I'm not sure if I don't think we have quorum, so this would be something that would have to be put forward to full board, but just real quick, give us a heads up on your vision for a snowy day open streets.
Yes, absolutely. And this is a situation where just with open streets, like, it's kind of been the permits and everything have come together in kind of a different way this year than in previous years. So I don't even really know what the ask is. But DOT has given us the access to these streets kind of in perpetuity, and has asked us to activate them year round. So we've taken a break since the end of October, just to give everybody some time to breathe and see what the winter season would bring. And now we kind of, the restaurants are settling into their outdoor setups, and like we're starting to figure out what this winter long haul is going to look like. So we've been trying to brainstorm what are the winter streets going to look like. And one idea is to not stress everybody out and do it every weekend and just have people shivering outside, but make it really special and just do a pop-up on snow days, because there's a special energy when the snowflakes are falling and the snow is fresh. And so I've spoken to sanitation, because basically we were thinking about what would it be like if we left the street with the snow, put up the barricades, had free hot chocolate, and let kids and families make snowmen and snowballs and snow forts and everything. We think 101 is probably going to be too skinny. Pleasant Avenue might work because they would need to plow a 15-foot emergency lane. And on Pleasant Avenue, it's so wide that they could plow a lane and then we still have snow left. So I've talked to sanitation preliminarily, like not at all officially. And at Pleasant Avenue, our partner is the Mayor's Action Plan, which presumably has the ear of the mayor. So in any event, I'm not sure what the ask is. Jessica and Xavier, we're still working on what that is, but I just wanted to float that we do want to keep these streets active and kind of keep a special energy around them for the winter. So it's kind of to be decided what the next step is, and I just wanted to bring it to y'all's attention. And if you have any creative ideas, we would love to hear them too.
Thank you, Carrie. I think there's all sorts of great possibilities. I think, some concerns that I have would be making sure that there was resident support along Pleasant Ave for that sort of thing. And I think that would be a courtesy. I think the big logistical question is, can the communication through the city to, give the order to not plow the street happen? Is it safe? How will it be cleaned up? I think the potential for a lot of really great sanctioned fun is clear. I think, ultimately the ask might be a letter of support from the board to engage in those activities on Pleasant Ave. I would, in addition to MAP, I think that the garden partners, Pleasant Avenue Community Garden, and any other kind of points of support to make sure that there won't be a big kind of outcry or backlash against what would transpire on a fun snowy day for some, but might be a nightmare if you can't get your car effectively moved if you needed to.
Exactly.
So I don't know how that works out, but maybe Xavier has some thoughts or others. But I think the intention is really great. So does anybody else have any thoughts? I know this is a tag on at the end of the meeting and we're all, but I guess the takeaway is stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Check the Farmer's Almanac and let's see if we're gonna have any snow.
Okay. Thank you very much, Carrie and Xavier.
Thank you guys.
If there's Carly, do I need a motion to adjourn or do we just call adjournment?
You technically don't need a motion, but I know some committee chairs like to have it, but you technically do not need a motion to adjourn.
Okay, wonderful. Would anybody care to offer a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Yolanda. Any seconds for adjournment, or we all, what is the word? It's not attrition, but we all agree. So all in favor of adjournment?
All agree. I agree.
Thank you very much for your contributions and patience while chairing a long meeting. If you have any thoughts to follow up or expression of interest in the cross-committee partnership, please don't hesitate to reach out and send your good healing thoughts to our committee chair, Jose. Have a wonderful holiday, and we'll see you all next week at full board. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.